Yes.
Even outside, it's packed.
Hit that like, people, come on. Happy Wednesday. Sorry I'm starting a little late. You know, it's Valentine's Day. Come on. Come on now. Nobody rushes out of bed on a Valentine's Day. You know what I'm laughing out about. There. Stay on target. Stay on target. Work screens. All right, look at that. It works. I can't believe it. It's good, and audio's actually happening. I'm not hot and overmodulated. I feel hot. I mean, it is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day for all those who celebrate. And for those who don't. I got a bone to pick with the alt holiday crowd. With this whole, like, Galentine. I'm just hanging out with my girls. I don't need a man. All right, well, then don't celebrate Valentine's Day. Skip it. If it's Father's Day and you're not a father, don't pretend you are or something. If it's Mother's Day and you're not a mom, or you don't like your mom, or you're not in let it slide. If it's Arbor Day and you don't like trees, you don't have to be like, you don't have to turn it into Harbor's Day, where you just go enjoy water instead of trees. Any of that stuff. It's you see what I'm saying? You don't need to. You don't have to say Happy Jew Year to your friends on Rosh Hashanah, or is it Yom Kippur? It's Yom Kippur, right? It's just let the holiday be what it is, and then Galentine's is on the 13th. It's not a thing, Peggy. It's very silly and rude. Don't commandeer holidays and dissipate them. It's very silly. It's silly. I have a spot on my nose, do I? Oh, because I was wearing a Breathe Right strip. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was because of my glasses. That's what it was. So I was out wearing my glasses. All right. How you doing, guys? These are Meta glasses. Let's see if I can hear. Hey, Meta, what time is it?
It's 9:22 in the morning.
You barely hear it, but there's a little speaker in the side. These are the smart glasses. I have these guys, and I've been wearing them out and about just because they're useful, but I got them for Nerd Halen, and I'm going to get the lenses replaced with clear lenses, so that I can be ultra nerdy on stage, and these will be my nerd glasses, so that I can live stream Nerd Halen shows from the camera that's on the side there. There's a little camera. So here, I'll show you real quick. This is me taking a picture of my setup. You see the little blinking light, I think, and then long pressing it. Now it's recording. So this is my point of view, and good Lord, my desk is a mess. I'm never going to show this video to anyone. This is atrocious. Good Lord. And that's the end of the video. Whether I post it, I'm not going to say. I'll decide that later. But yeah, so that's more than like, they're very heavy on your nose compared to regular glasses is the only thing. But I got them for Nerd Halen, because these are going to be, they're kind of perfect for Nerd Halen glasses. They just need different lenses. So I'm going to Lens Crafters today and getting the lenses changed out. Thank you for sending love to Summer Cosmic Rose. I appreciate it. You can't afford $300 glasses. I never have before. These are props for shows. So these are work glasses, as it were. I have a thing about sunglasses. I will never pay more than $5 for a pair of sunglasses, because I'm not going to pay $100 for something I'm going to forget, sit on, or scratch. Yeah, but these are going to be these are my Nerd Halen glasses, or they will be, anyways. It's celebrating the women in your life. I agree, Celery. That's exactly what it's for. So there you go. You learn not to? Do I? I haven't so far. I don't think I have. Oh, by the way, hi, chat room. Welcome to the show. How are you? Hit that like. It's the Wednesday morning show. And I started a little late because it's Valentine's Day. And I had to start the day off right, as it were, with flowers and chocolates and whatnot and sweet nothings. Also, Summer has to go to work early today, so I wanted to make sure I got all that in before she headed out the door. It was I'll post a picture of the flowers, the arrangement that I made a little bit later. Oh, chat room, why'd you go away? Come back, chat room. There you are. I don't know why. Sometimes chat rooms just leave. It's what they do. Were you getting jealous? Was that what it is? Chat room? I get it. It's not a new jacket. This is an old jacket. I have a lot of old jackets. I just rotate them through. How what? Did somebody ask a I beg your pardon. Do I look that relaxed? All right. Yeah, so anyways, Ghost in the gears again. It happens. You guys needed a moment. All right, I understand. I completely understand. Obviously the big news is the fact that Santos's district was reclaimed last night by the Democrat that actually held it for a long while. And Donald Trump is blaming Philip, the one who was running. Philip. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. This is, yeah, here we go. This is the, oh, quit it, you silly, silly thing. Oh, it's because the Mac laptop's there. There we go. Yeah. This is so weird. Republicans just don't learn, but maybe she was still a Democrat. Okay, first of all, we're right out of the gate. The man is trapped in blather again. He doesn't know what went wrong, so everything went wrong. It is an interesting part of the Donald Trump strategy, which is if you don't realize what part you played or didn't play in it, just take every possible reason and say all of them, and understand that your followers are fucking dough-headed enough that they will actually just take the part that sounds the most plausible and run with it. I have an almost 99% endorsement success rate in primaries and a very good number in the general elections as well. But just watch this very foolish woman, Mazi Melissa Phillip, running in a race where she didn't endorse me and tried to straddle the fence when she would have easily won if she'd understood anything about modern day politics in America. I don't know why he's yelling modern day. So there'll be some sort of Q, I guess, translation later on. QAnon people in the chat room, please explain, I suppose. Yeah, Philip is foolish, but Herschel Walker's a genius. Yeah, that's clearly the issue. MAGA, which is most of the Republican Party, stayed home, and it always will, unless it is treated with respect that it deserves. I stayed out of the race. I wanted to be loved. Give us a real candidate in the district for November. Swozy, I know him well, can easily be beaten. No, you don't. No, he can't. And he was in there for the only reason he wasn't still the candidate was because he dropped out to run for governor and he lost to Hochul in the primary. It's ridiculous. As soon as he ran again, he trounced just stupid. But this, like, just screaming about like, I'm relevant. I'm relevant. I'm so relevant. Please see me as worthwhile. I want to be loved. Send me money. I don't even know what the quote is. I want to be loved. Give us a real candidate. And I stayed out of the race. I want to be loved. It's so weird. Yeah. Anyways, just a goofy fuck. And obviously that, I guess everybody's like talking about whatever strategy they had in it. I didn't actually see one. I think other than perhaps they thought we'll run a black woman in the candidate and therefore that's now our stopgap to push back in any election we're going to lose. We'll put one of our minority candidates up, and then we'll wag a finger at Democrats and say, you guys voted for this old white guy instead of voting for a black lady who doesn't believe in a woman's right to choose and thinks that Donald Trump should be a dictator for life and stuff. But still, she's a black lady and you should vote for her because identity politics, not recognizing that identity politics actually has to do with sort of, in theory anyways, the depth of that identity, not, just kind of the skin deep aspect of an identity. I suppose, or I guess we would have all voted for Rachel Dolezal, right? That's the argument. Let's see if I can find this thing. Oh, quit. It's the MIT press reader. This in 2020. Okay. Wanted to talk to you about something. This morning, first chat room. There you go. Thoughts? Any rags? Any bones? Any rags today? There you go. Happy Valentine's. There you go. Make America Forever great again. Large reason why Bush nominated woefully unqualified Clarence Thomas to fill Thurgood Marshall's seat. Yeah, because they figured Democrats couldn't say no. Can't say no to a black candidate. Because they think the reason that Biden and others are nominating black candidates for these roles is strictly for like the tokenism of luring in a particular group of people instead of saying, no, this has never represented the American people, and therefore there are plenty of very qualified minority people of all categories who could fill these roles and who have been previously just kind of passed over. Yeah. Jon Stewart has economics experts and they talk about age. Yeah, could not believe it. Yeah, that's going to be the running gag. That's what he's doing. And by the way, that is the talking point the Russians have decided is going to be the most effective for the rest of the year, because every gaffe will be seen through the lens of age, because most people, when they if you're young and you forget something, you just forgot something. When you're old and you forgot something, it's a senior moment. And for whatever reason, because Joe Biden doesn't dye his hair anymore and Trump does, the illusion of youth, I guess, is the mask that they're going to use for Trump. Right? Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to try and... There's a couple of things. Open this one up. So there was a thing... let's see this thing. This is the MIT press reader, and I don't know how many people in the chat room, just to start off, and this will be a good conversation to have with Phil when he comes on at the in the next hour. But how many people in the chat room are familiar with Operation Denver, which was actually supposed to be sort of Operation Dietrich, which sounds a lot more harsh than Denver. Operation Denver sounds like the attempting to legalize weed across the entire country using that phrase. Like, it's Operation Denver, man. Rocky Mountain High in Colorado. Okay. Operation Denver was a KGB plan to spread disinformation in Western societies that uses a 60-40 or 80-20 falsehood to truth ratio, meaning you get 40 to or 20% truth around something, and then 80 or 60% of it, depending on what you have and what you can use, is fake and meant to cause people to attack each other in these countries. So basically, it's the zombification of a populace. This is where you are. Well, the biggest one where it all started, and I'll see if I can find. There should be a the actual article of it. I know it's. Well, here's an image of it. This is the best I can come up with. There's yeah. So it started with this article that was written like a letter to the editor that was essentially the root of the story that America, the CIA created AIDS to kill black people. This was the start of the project, and in many ways that it was their way of putting their toe in the water about in the disinformation realm. And specifically, I mean, there's also after the Soviet Union fell, all this information was made available, and then this is the original like directive. This is an image of it. This is the original directive. They again came out after the fall of the USSR about how they started this project to attack the United States by planting this an article in a newspaper and then reference in an African country and then referencing that article in the United States and then letting this ball rolling. It was the first attempt at building this structure where you take a piece of disinformation, specifically fake information, and you use misinformation, meaning people who read it credulously and I suppose think that it's genuine or already have a bone to pick with the U.S. or whoever it's directed at, because this is, we're aware of the ones and we talk about the ones where they're attacking us, but they did this to myriad of other countries, right? But the main ones, again, the ones we know about are the ones directed at us. So they took this story, plan it in a newspaper, and then other people who mean well started going, "Oh dear God, I hope that's not true." And then they would be quoted and stacked on top of that. And then people went, "Well, we've got to look into this to make sure that that's not the case." And then the story becomes people are looking into this, this story that the CIA created AIDS to kill black people. And by looking at it, people are like, well, if they're looking at it, there must be, where there's smoke, there's fire. And so effectively, the Russians spent the rest of, from like 1987 to 1995 throwing smoke bombs all around the world, to the point where I've heard Alex Jones quote this story. I've over the years, I'm sure, how many people in the chat room have had at least one person bring up this particular story or this theory that either the U.S. government created AIDS or they created AIDS specifically to kill black people or specifically to kill gay people? How many people in the chat room have heard like that story come up, or at least somebody mention it, right? Yep, me. There you go. Yeah, some people have heard gay people. Some people have heard that they were there to kill black people, and that kind of stuff. Okay. This was, let me be abundantly clear. Let me be very precise about this. The idea, the fact that you heard this was a specifically planted news bomb, a fake story that was meant to be cascaded by the fanning of smoke. The idea that they would create an absolute falsehood, because that's what it is. It is an absolute falsehood. You're an epidemiologist and you debunked it in school? Yeah. And the fact that you had to, I think, is what we're talking about. That's fucking amazing. that epidemiologists had to run exercises in school to shoot this thing down. When it was created by, specifically created by the KGB as a seed story that would undermine not just like the world's trust in the United States, but also pockets of Americans, fear and disbelief about their own government. Okay, this is crucial because this was, in many ways, Tuskegee experiment made it possible to believe. Well, yeah, that's again, that would be the 20%. And again, the Tuskegee experiment was not them giving syphilis, it was just leaving it untreated and seeing how it would go. And it was a cruel and disgusting thing. But it wasn't that they created a new strain just to kill other people or went, okay, this strain goes after black people and this strain, none of that. But you could see how you could create bits of fear around that. And then you mix that in with the crowd that bought into the Ruby Ridge conspiracy or Waco or any of those things. And it stirs up into this distrust paranoia soup. Russia is our ally. They are our friends. They would never do such thing, right? So, yes, this is why critical thinking is a virtue. But so let's see. This is from MIT, but let's see. Reports in the mainstream U.S. media about the AIDS disinformation campaign have generally been accurate in terms of its workings, its impact, and its potential lessons for today in terms of understanding and combating disinformation. Nevertheless, some important details have been missing or wrong. For example, it was a September 1985 cable from the KGB, not the East German Ministry of the State Security, the Stasi, to Bulgarian state security that was served as a smoking gun regarding the launch of the AIDS disinformation campaign. This is document 1. I'll open that for you in 1 second. The Stasi called the secret disinformation campaign Operation Denver, not Infection, as practically all journalists in the entire internet now claim. See document 2. Okay, boom. And both the KGB and the Stasi underlined the role of Soviet East German biologist Jacob Segal in their disinformation campaign. Now, Jacob Segal and his wife were communists. Let's take this. Hold on. This is the... Yeah, here it is. Except, this was originally handwritten, but they translated it. Yeah. We're conducting a series of active measures in connection with the appearance in recent years in the USA of a new and dangerous disease, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS, and its subsequent large-scale spread to other countries, including those in Western Europe. The goal of these measures is to create a favorable opinion for us abroad, and that this disease is the result of secret experiments with a new type of biological weapon by the secret services of the USA and the Pentagon that spun out of control. It would be desirable if you could join in the implementation of these measures through your capabilities in party, parliamentary, public policy, or journalistic circles in Western and developing countries by promoting the following thesis in the bourgeoisie press. One, having first appeared at the end of the 70s in New York, AIDS has become, by 1985, one of the most dangerous diseases in the world. In the U.S. alone, more than 12,400 cases have been registered, for which around one half have died, according to the estimates of the American physicians. Currently, around 3 million persons in the USA are carriers. Since the disease is a very long incubation period, 1 to 5 years, identifying it at an early stage when there is still hope of curing the patient is extremely difficult. There was no cure at the time, but again, this is the story they want out, not the reality. By 85, disease is spread beyond the United States. Numerous cases, blah, blah, facts have already been cited in the press of the developing countries, in particular in India, that testify to the involvement of special services of the United States. And by the way, special services is how they refer to the CIA, because that's how they refer to their phrases. Now, again, you'll understand that Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin was just another one of these. And you can tell how Tucker Carlson is sort of like, well, obviously he said this, and obviously we know these, and this is an obvious thing, and obviously it's this. By saying obviously, and we know this, and everyone knows this, repeatedly, the idea is that there must be multiple sources, because what kind of an asshole would say that kind of shit, right, if they didn't have multiple sources? Nobody would say everybody knows this if it wasn't just everywhere. Well, it's not, and what kind of an asshole? The Tucker Carlson type. So, which Seagal was part of that. Now, let's see this guy. Wait, hold on. AIDS. We need. Yeah, there you go. Spread fake news about it. This is in 2018. A few years ago, historian Douglas Selvage discovered the blueprint for a fake news campaign. 1985 cable from the Stasi, which is the part they get. The MIT was talking about was wrong. It's actually from the KGB itself through the Stasi. Was all because they had a primary one that they talked to. They each had a different name for it. The Russians called it Operation Infection. The Germans, the Stasi called it Operation Denver because they were pointing at Fort Detrick in the United States, and it was their mistake about Detrick, Denver. That was just like a writing mishap because they didn't care for or understand our use of either word. And Detrick sounded too German to them, so rather than say Detrick, which sounds like it's from there, call it Operation Denver. That literally, that's where it's from. Yeah. So, it was a smoking gun, proving what intelligence agencies on both sides of the Cold War already knew, that the Soviets had played a key role in spreading false rumors about the AIDS epidemic. And let me see. Let's go back to here. Yeah, Division X of the Hauptverwaltung Aufklärung, HVAX of the Ministry of State Security, planned for common and coordinated active measures of the intelligence organs of the MOI, the PR Bulgaria, and the MFS of the GDR of 1987 and 1988. So they coordinated across a bunch of fronts. Somebody, is it? We're all right? Hold on. Okay. They coordinated a bunch, through East Germany and all the the Russian satellites. Okay. Now, this let's be abundantly clear. Let me see if I can bring up is it the Seagal? Where are we? Yeah. Selvage's article appeared a few months before COVID-19 burst on the public consciousness. This is the interview from them. Okay, so where is it? Operation. Yeah. Okay, so this is ResearchGate. This is the Operation Denver thing. Now, they talk about there's been much debate in recent years about the role of the East German Ministry of State Security, the Stasi, and the disinformation campaign launched in the early 1980s by the Soviet State Security Committee, the KGB, regarding the origin and nature of acquired immune deficiency syndrome. The KGB's operation, codenamed Denver by the Stasi, not infection, as many online sources now erroneously assert, claimed that AIDS was deliberately devised by U.S. biological warfare specialists for the U.S. government to spread in minority communities in the United States. Based on available evidence, the Stasi's role in the AIDS disinformation campaign was limited in 85 to 86 to 1, keeping watch over Soviet East German scientist Jacob Seagal, who propagated a variant of the KGB's thesis, helping to arrange for the publication and distribution of a brochure from Seagal's thesis of the Non-Aligned Movement Summit in Harare in 1986, and the spread of the KGB's AIDS disinformation was a cycle of misinformation, disinformation that arose between the U.S.-based conspiracy theorists, especially Lyndon LaRouche and his followers, and authors and publications espousing Moscow's preferred thesis regarding AIDS. Now, one of the other things, so they put out this kind of shit. This is Pentagonzvovsky Spitsdelitsy, wordplay in Russian, combining the word specialist with Russian abbreviation for AIDS, Spitsdelitsy. So the Pentagon creating AIDS, which is like this Nazi disease. Look at the little swastikas. This doctor giving this vial of swastikas to the United States, and all these dead feet around him. Okay. I want you to recognize that anytime you're hearing a story about stuff like this, the Russians have been playing a hand in it and continue to this day. They still do. And the disgusting part of it was, of course, is that this bioweapon bullshit was a distraction. In many ways, from us actually finding a cure for it and working towards it across the world. Because you have to understand, the United States wasn't the only place seeking out a cure, and all this talk about it made everybody suspicious about even the treatment about it, and gummed up the works. created divisions between countries that could have shared information that would have led to a cure or a treatment much sooner. Yeah. Also, yeah, you'll notice that the pointy nose on the doctor looks very Jewish, which is very curious in that regard. And that's one of their running gags, that they constantly are doing it. Now, this is not the first time that that the Russians did stuff like this, because initially, I mean, you can find their hand in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, the paper that has been, the book that has been used to put a blood libel on Jews forever, to paint Zionism as not a search for a homeland, but as a version. Well, Jews are basically the real Nazis, and the Nazis were doing the world a favor by getting rid of them. That was the purpose. Is Disease X coming? No. We live in a complicated world. There will be infections. They will come up and they will go down. Disease X is again, it's a placeholder for the idea that we have to interact. And that's actually a great point that you bring up, chat room. So, in terms of, quote, Disease X, one of the other things that you heard about, what have you heard about Ukraine biolabs? Right? Ukrainian biolabs, from everybody from fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene to Rand Paul to Tucker Carlson to Alex Jones to Jimmy fucking Dore. You keep hearing about the U.S. has a relation with biolabs in Ukraine. There are biolabs, bioweapons labs there. Well, there are two ways to describe a bioweapons lab. One that creates bioweapons, which is what they want you to believe, and those that protect against the potential for bioweapons. Now, what do you think a country that likes its populace, that has a volume of people that actually, have made the country rich and powerful and all that kind of stuff, like the United States, and even like Ukraine, if it was left alone, what do you think you want of your people? You want them to live in general. What do you think they think in Russia about the vast majority of their populace, or even in China for that matter? Have they shown themselves to give a fuck about their population? I mean, look at how Russia is prosecuting its fucking war and how it's sending its men into the meat grinder with a total disregard for them being up armored, protected, any of that shit. The United States, we are us as a populace, and our elected representatives, people in the Pentagon, when we sent people into Iraq, our soldiers into Iraq, without up-armored Humvees or without bulletproof vests and that kind of stuff, or inadequate ones, what was the response of the United States public? Our fucking hair caught fire. What's going on, Chud? Speaking of hair caught fire, what are you doing? What's going on? Did you come to play it's a morning show visit? Hello. You have a message from the Kremlin for me? Because you look like a Russian hat. I'm just saying. We must keep her away from the Russians. They will make hat of her. This is her. This is so. So the important thing is that I heard somebody talking about this like yesterday, about like sort of propaganda and the idea behind propaganda and how it works. And a big part of it is, if a story makes you angry, it's propaganda. If you're the kind of person who's angered by a statistic or something like that, or you're looking at it and nobody else is getting mad, then that's different. But if everybody's getting mad at a story all at the same time, it should make you slightly suspicious. All right. So yeah. So then everything, right? Well, and again, there's a difference between being like, disgusted or worried or whatever. All right. Thank you. But the idea is that you're being manipulated. And again, yes, Gaza is a great example. So let me see if I can put this math up on the. Yeah, let's do this. Do a quick note. That's where it goes. Okay, and then we'll take this over here. Let me show you something real quick, and I'll try and work this out for you. I got to create a new page on here. New page. Okay, there we go. Hide this over here. Now, we'll just call this Gaza by the numbers. Okay. And I'll run. You'll see where I'm going with this, because what's the purpose? Because again, if the goal is to have a two-state solution, so that there's Palestinian territories and there's and they can have their own country, and Israel has its own place. If that's the goal, then none of this fighting ultimately makes sense. October 7th doesn't make sense. Hamas rising up in Gaza doesn't make sense, because they're not headed for a two-state solution. So anybody wants a two-state solution who is like okay with the rise of Hamas, or expects them to kind of settle back in and become a functioning partner in this, it's just silly. But let me show you what I mean in terms of what you've heard versus what's really going on. And again, you don't have to buy into what my feelings about any of this, but these are very distinct elements of this story. Now let me bring this up and I'll be able to type on the thing. And where is it? Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is Gaza by the numbers. Okay, let's talk about the things that we have heard. Open air prison, right? That's one of the phrases. Yeah, I got to make these larger. These are not good. Did we make them bold? How do we bold? I guess Control B. Yeah. Okay. And then plus. Hold on. And then plus. Okay, that'll work. All right. Now I don't want to ask AI. Quit it. Go away. All right. Now I don't want. No. Stop trying to help me. Okay. This is so funny. All right. Here we go. Open air prison. This is what we've heard. It's an open air prison. Which, and again, two borders, Israel and, Israel. There we go. Because it's not capitalized. Is that what you're doing? And one border, Egypt. Right? There we go. Okay. So if it's an open air prison, two countries are guarding it. Yep. Okay. There we go. Now, let's go back down to here. Let's go to the other one. Most densely populated place on Earth. Yes? We agree. These are all the phrases we've heard. This is about the phrases. This is about what I want you to understand are the phrases that you've heard, and then sort of the idea. Let's see, 1.2 million displaced in Rafah. Right? That's another phrase we're hearing, because this again, fundamentalists are the fucking problem with all religions. Yeah, well, I mean, fundamentalism is antithetical to democracy. You can't Orthodox religion is always anti-democracy because you can't have that. Yeah. Okay. Yes, and it's all, of course, it's Biden's fault. But I want you to first talk about. I want you to recognize that this phrase, open air prison, is not an actual thing. We understand it. It's an allegory. It's a premise, and that's okay. But it's got to be, you've heard it as a phrase. It might as well be a hashtag, right? You understand where I'm coming from on this? It's kind of important. And Phil's waiting in the background, so give me 1 second, and I will bring Phil in early for this, because I think he'll understand this argument as better than almost anybody. We're talking about Operation Infection / Operation Denver, Phil. the Russian misinformation campaign that created the idea that the CIA created AIDS, and how they're currently using that methodology. Can you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
but you're dropping out a lot. I don't know if
Huh.
how do I
Okay.
sound to you?
You sound fine. Check,
Oh,
check, 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 check. Is it better now?
no,
It
no.
might just.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Fine now.
Okay. Good.
Fine
Okay.
now.
Good. So, give me 1 second. What I'm going to do is I'll bring you in early, and I'll kind of run you through
Sure.
how I'm talking about this, because it's kind of crucial to how the both the Tucker Carlson interview, and let's see. Did I do this? I want to do this. Oh no, because never mind. Beg your pardon. I have my own page. Whoops. Oh, my screen. Well, that's fun. Grab this and
Oh,
bring you in. Yeah.
happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's sweet. Hold
Yeah.
that for the thing. I'll show you. I'll let everybody else see it. So, paste, and there he goes. Close, and that should bring you in and transition, and hopefully it comes in, and then the guest
Yay!
loop.
There
I
we
don't know
are.
why the loop got turned off. There we go. Hopefully it'll come back on in just 1 second. There we go. Yeah. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, Philip Ittner, and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day from Patron.
Yes, from Patron, which I have my stuffed
Patron, the
Patron
bomb
upstairs.
sniffing dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, hi there.
Hi.
How are you? Couple
Okay.
of things. Yeah. So, let's see.
Angry at the speaker.
Oh, understandably.
Yeah.
Although I think this is gonna, for all practical purposes, going to blow up in their face. So we'll deal with that a little bit.
I think so too.
Okay, so I was talking about this, and I don't know what your familiarity with it is, but
Mhm.
the idea that there was this Russian thing, and this Russian like plan that goes, it goes all the way back to the time of like Stalin, but that really took off in the 80s, where they use disinformation bombs to create a wave of misinformation, meaning that
Yes.
what I call it weaponized empathy. This is where, for all practical purposes, what you do is you take the well-meaning nature of the West and the openness of it, all the things that we kind of take for granted as part of our character in the West, and you recognize that your people either don't have it, or you've beat it out of them or taught them otherwise in the Soviet Union and China specifically, but then in Russia afterwards, kind of like it's become a feature, not a bug, of the leftover aspects of the Soviet Union, that we care about people. It reminds me of the in Superman 2, where Zod is going, he has a weakness. He cares about these people, right? That's the story, right? And so
Yeah.
because most people do, it's pretty easy to weaponize that empathy, to take the good nature of someone who doesn't want people to be victimized, doesn't want minorities to be harmed, doesn't want children to starve, all those kind of things that we give a shit about. If you don't give a shit about that, then all that is for you is a tool to attack your enemy. In this case, the KGB attacking the United States through this idea in Operation Denver, that they created this story that the CIA created AIDS to kill black people, and they planted it in.
I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was Operation Infection / Operation Denver. I think the German Stasi didn't want to call it Operation Dietrich because it sounds like it's from Germany. And I was talking a bit about the sort of news around Gaza and Ukraine. Obviously, him talking about denazification of Ukraine is fucking insanity, but
Yeah.
it took off. There were a bunch of people. I mean, Jimmy Dore was probably the biggest one, and Russell Brand tried to run behind him with a pooper scooper and try to salvage some of it as it failed, but he never was fully bought in. But Marjorie Taylor Greene sure as fuck was. And there were a bunch of people who, while they didn't participate in it, didn't push back on it at all, right? Let it carry.
Yeah. I mean, I remember distinctly Matt Gaetz in
Yeah.
some subcommittee, pressing the witness, are any of these weapons going to the Azov Brigade? Are we providing
Yes.
any weapons that end up in the hands of the Azov Brigade? With the presumption that the Azov Brigade is a Nazi
Full of Nazis.
organization, and
Yeah,
that is a direct GRU Russian talking
lie.
point.
Yeah, right.
And it's a lie, and it's also it's more complex than that.
Well, that's
as
what
life
that's what we were
tends
talking
to
about,
be.
the 80-20 rule. Take 20%. Something used to be a certain way. And this
Yeah.
goes to what you and I talk to about the West failing, but we at least try to better our societies. And in that failing, we look back at what was wrong. We look back at, and with a with a distinct eye. We have hearings about it in the Congress. People go to jail over it. We have trials and that kind of stuff. And there is plenty of evidence about the awful that happened in the country because we're trying to not have it happen again. The never again aspect of it, of almost everything. The Russians and the Chinese don't have that at all. They just make it,
No.
from a news standpoint, they make it disappear so that their enemies can't come in and go, you guys have mass shootings, you guys have mass stabbings, you guys have serial killers, you guys have drug problems. They just make all that stuff vanish in the press, and so they can go, that is something that the West has. That is something we don't have to deal with. That's a problem over there.
That's a decadent West thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so when and a lot of it centers around these kind of phrases, like we have to, the premise of denazification of Ukraine is that there are Nazis there in the first place. Obviously, you wouldn't have to denazify a place that doesn't have Nazis in it. And since there are kind of neo-Nazis almost everywhere, many of them, by the way, going way back to the USSR and their initial support for the Nazis with the Molotov-Ribbentrop agreement and all that kind of stuff.
Molotov-Ribbentrop, yep.
And this week, during that fucking, or last week now, I guess, last weekend now, Tucker Carlson having this fucker, say to him, it was Poland's, they just were mean to Hitler, so that's why he attacked. And just floating this shit as if, there's an argument to be had. There is none. It's just ahistorical and ridiculous. But to a bunch of people who are, useful idiots like Tucker Carlson, or the people who, drink from his fucking trough, it creates another one of these disinfo bombs that they can carry around as misinfo because they're not actively lying. Like Tucker Carlson's actively lying. Vladimir Putin is actively lying. There's a bunch of these assholes that are actively engaged in disinformation. That's not the vast majority. The vast majority are gullible dipshits conveying misinformation, which is they take the lie and they present it as truth because they've accepted it as truth. Even if they're not 100% bought in, they'll exclude the parts they're not bought in on because it's part of their ego. And they'll only present the parts they're 100% in on to the next person. Well, the next person receives that 100%, doesn't hear the other details that the other person excluded, and either thinks, well, they just didn't bring that up, and it's true like the piece, like the nugget that they gave me, or it's not important. The important thing is this main part of that lie. So,
and then also there are instances where they will take it on whole cloth and they won't question any of it because it's packaged so nicely that it's this little thing that this narrative that you don't have to think beyond the next step or two or peel the onion one or two layers.
No.
You just take it on, it's nice little package thing. The Azov Brigade, obviously they're filled with Nazis. So then we move from there, just on that assumption, on that narrative, on that, presumption. And then, once you build on that, it's so hard to deconstruct it and get back to, a place of honesty and truth. And unfortunately, Americans are in particular, susceptible to a lot of what the Russians are doing because
we have
the Russians know exactly
tradition.
how to do it.
We also have a valuable tradition of criticizing our government. Mm-hmm. that's valuable. That is a good part of our society. When our leaders do something wrong, we have the ability and the desire and the want to push back. The problem is when you're pushing back against something that isn't true. Because there's two things that occur when you do that. Like somebody's planted an idea that the government did something awful, that there's a bunch of people that believe that, certain war crimes were committed or the U.S. created AIDS or any of those ridiculous things. That those people, when they push back, there's two things that happen. One is anybody who does come to the government with a genuine criticism is caught up in the noise of that other bullshit. They're having to yell over the din of idiots blathering that stuff 24/7. Everything Alex Jones says is meant to water down genuine criticism of any governmental thing, because when you're all in, effectively he's for it. I mean, there's no way that Alex Jones and the people around him aren't for the PNAC's dominoes theory in the Middle East, that they were going to knock down 7 countries and that they would start with Iraq and go to Iran and all that kind of stuff that Wesley Clark talked about. Alex Jones isn't against that. But by throwing up all this shit about fucking bioweapons and Jade Helm and they're going to fucking FEMA coffins and all this shit, they water down any criticism people might bring up about stuff that sounds like a genuine conspiracy, which would be the PNAC document to try and create a dominoes effect in the Middle East, which most Americans are against. It waters it all down. The other thing is that it makes the politicians kind of numb to the voice of the louder voices of people, because it just tends to be a buzz. You tend to just kind of go, ugh, and go back to what you're doing. Yeah, it's flood. Yeah, Project Flood the Zone with shit is what Captain Turp in our chat's calling, and that's what Steve Bannon talks about, right? It's
Well, it's not, and this is not just a technique that is used externally. The Russians do it to themselves. Especially the tail end of the Soviet Union, when they were really desperately trying to hold on to control. They realized that they could not. They realized that their population was getting information from outside sources, whether it was Radio Free Europe or whatever else, but that they were getting, and there was this what was called kind of the what is the Native Americans who used to do smoke signals and stuff.
Oh yeah.
For that kind of communication, the kind of that would telegraph things to one another.
Right.
There was a whole underground system for that. The KGB, realizing that they couldn't completely shut it down, came to the realization that what we can do is we can just put out contradictory stories that just all it does is just I don't know what to believe anymore.
Right, gum up the works.
Right, they don't have to sell
chat room,
you
they're saying
one
wind talkers.
thing.
Is that what you're referring to? The
wind talkers? No, the wind talkers were it's my understanding.
They were the code breakers.
The translators. Those were the code breakers who spoke Navajo in the Pacific, primarily in the Pacific. No, it's just smoke signals, just kind of like or semaphore. Let's say that. Okay, that's kind of how information, because you couldn't trust state television. Or state media, so there was this whole underground information network, throughout Russia or the Soviet Union, and it was uncontrollable at the last stage, and so they developed this whole thing of like, we don't have to tell them a story that they have to believe, we just have to bombard them with so much that they don't know what to believe, and there is no reality, and everything is a conspiracy theory, and everything is built on.
That was when they apparently, during this period of time, during this Operation Denver idea, was that they decided that there was this sort of strategy of subjective truth, right?
Yes.
The idea was to just create a truth that's based on whatever the fuck we say it is, and then surround people with confirmation bias about it, so that they automatically, everybody goes, of course that's what it is, of course, which is how Tucker Carlson talks. This is an asshole who went on a guided tour of the swanky Russian nightlife that is enjoyed by the upper class, and thinks that the average fucking Russian lives that fucking way. Like, I would love to sit down with Tucker Carlson and just watch the suicide videos coming out of Moscow, not out of Russia, just Moscow. There are enough people jumping off of buildings and blowing themselves up or shooting themselves in public in Russia on the given that there are dozens of them filmed a month by strangers walking by, like, oh, fuck, there's another guy on the roof. Thud. There's enough. Do you realize, as densely populated as New York is or whatever, and I'm sure there are a number of suicides that happen just because of the nature of the city, and yet very few, if any of them, are ever caught on film as they happen. But in Russia, it's just like, bump, there you go. Yeah, post it to social media, off you go.
When I saw Tucker Carlson, it still hurts me to have to say his name, in Dubai, saying this whole thing about, like, Moscow is a much more beautiful city than anything I have in my homeland. I felt I'm screaming at the screen going, you piece of shit, get in a car on Red Square, drive 2 hours east, and you will be in places where they don't have indoor plumbing and you have to go to an outhouse in the 21st century to take a shit.
That's why you have the opulence that the Russians inside Moscow have is at the expense. We're talking about income fucking inequality. And again,
God.
That's another thing. So think of phrases like income inequality, which have they're valuable conversations to have about income inequality. There's 20% of truth. There's certainly
the middle class does seem to be under a lot of stress.
Right, that's true. However, the middle class, the bottom 50% of the United States has gained $3 trillion worth of wealth in the last 3 years. You know, their lives are getting better. Their wages are going up and stuff. And you'll notice there's a bit like the income inequality conversation isn't quite gripping the way it was for a period of time. But it also had to do with the fact that, you know, what the Russians and the Trumpies of the world were trying to do was create dissension amongst Democratic ranks. Because I got news for you. Republicans don't give a fuck about it. They are as Russian about income inequality, you know, as anybody. Because they're like, bootstrap it, motherfucker. If you're poor, it's your ass. And the other thing is, there's two reasons you can be poor in this country. One, you're fucking lazy. Or two, the government is against you and it's giving your money to other people who are lazy. Which a lot of these motherfuckers think the same things both of those things at the same time. Most maggots talk about income inequality or why they're not making it on both of those reasons. That I'm not making it because somebody's taking my money, whatever, and I'm busting my ass.
If only not for that, I would be a multimillionaire.
Right? Yeah.
It's the old idiom of most Americans. You know what is it that they either, you know, they think that they're millionaires, they just haven't made it yet. You know, they're owed being, you know.
Well, the irony is
somebody's keeping them down.
The irony is that most, like even lower middle class people in the United States live as equivalent millionaires in dozens of other countries. Never mind the countries where you could never achieve anything. Even our poor do better than the richest in some countries. You know, it's certainly the middle class if they even exist. It's very distinct. But that phrase, income inequality, has a seed of truth in it that needs to be worked on. And in a balanced society, that's what we should be working on. As a Democrat, I personally believe that we should help the middle class grow it out so there's not this big distinct difference between earners, right? We're not talking about the people who are fucking sleeping on their uncle's couch and being an asshole and a drag on society, and that there's a difference between what they make and what a fucking high-functioning CEO who built their own company is. Nobody's making the argument that there's an income inequality gap there. It's the people who do the majority of the work in a company, you know, especially on the middle and managerial level at this point, or put in physical labor on a building company that are that distant from the CEO that rolls through, has a golden parachute, is only there for 3 years and might fuck up the company.
Yep.
That's what most people, I think, deal with income inequality. And that's how we should deal with it. In Russia, though, you know what the attitude towards income inequality is? Fuck you. I mean, that's what you're talking about. Yeah. The reason there's so much opulence and nice shit where they took, by the way, Moscow's building dead train tunnels to nowhere to keep some of their populace busy. They were doing the Chinese model for a while. So There are really clean train stations they can take dignitaries to that are incredibly clean. You know why? Because nobody uses them. The trains don't stop there. The only time a train stops there is when they are bringing somebody to show them the place. And you know where it goes? You know where the train they take them to goes to? Another train station that's empty that they don't use for. It's a private train station effectively. China does the same thing with their high-speed rail. If they got a film crew like mine come through, we got taken. We left from the nicest station and we arrived at the nicest station. We went right past the stations that everybody else uses. So that was, again, the income inequality aspect of it. That phrase, hashtag income inequality.
And you're right. You're right. There's a real mentality in Russia, and I don't know if this is the same in China as well. Again, that's your bailiwick. There's a real atmosphere in Russia of like, if you're not like, it's up to you to steal, buy, grab, whatever, if you have aspirations of greatness, I mean, you have to take it from somebody else. You have to be that you constantly have to be, and also that power and wealth and money is a zero-sum game, and that if you have it, it's because you've taken it from somebody else. And if somebody doesn't have power or money or whatever it is, it's because they were weak and somebody persuaded them out of it. So it's all on you. It's a very brutal attitude towards power and money in Russia. I mean, and this goes back centuries. I mean, going back to, if you look at the great works of Russian literature. I mean, there's Gogol and Lost Souls is the seminal work of Russian literature, and it's all about a guy who is trying to cheat the system, so that he can and by basically sucking up people who aren't really people. They're just grist for the mill for the state, and so he's manipulating that system. I mean, that's just that. I mean, that is a really good way to understand Russia, is to read Dead Souls. That's one of the books I always recommend people read when they're trying to understand Russia. There is. I mean, we look at it, as I'm pretty center, but I'm on the left side. But that a safety net for people who have difficulties, that get caught up in life's troubles. I'm happy that some of my tax dollars go to that. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But this other mentality that is on the other side of the aisle, and also is probably why GOPers kind of have an affinity for Russians, is because there is this sense of like, it's somebody gets and somebody doesn't, and if you want to be, you're either anvil, the old saying, you're either anvil or hammer, decide which one you want to be, sort of thing. And the whole system is built that way in Russia, and it's brutally cruel. They would argue, well, I mean, that's, of course, I mean, at least we're honest about it. At least we don't pretend, that we're these great.
The world is nice, right?
That the world is exactly, that there is empathy, that there is humanity, that there is that these are all. I had my first Russian language teacher made a point to me one time, and it was one of my first lessons in culture as opposed to language from her. And she said, the one thing we Russians really criticize you guys about is you smile all the time. And when you give money to the poor, it's so that you can feel good about yourself. If I'm going to give money to the poor, it's because I want to help the poor, not for my own selfish gains. And I was like, you really see things only in binary terms. It's only it's either, there is no there is no selfless act, or that there's always an ulterior motive with you Westerners. There's always you walk around smiling, but you don't really mean it, sort of thing. And at least we're honest enough to if we're going to be cruel, we're going to be cruel, and if we're going to be kind, it's because we want to be kind. It's all done from this very honest, sincere place, and you Westerners are all artificial, and you put things up like laws, and say that you abide by the rule of law, but we all know that you're rich, maneuver around it. And cynically, we fail in our ideals often. But
Right.
again, it comes back to the idea of do you want to at least try to be better?
Yeah.
And there's very little of that in Russia. There's very, very little of like,
Well, let me. We'll give
just
you
screw
an
it,
example.
'cause-
We are what 48 hours away, probably, from 400,000 dead Russians.
Yep.
We're less by the time you and I talk on Saturday, there will have been in this Ukraine war 400,000 dead Russians. And keep in mind the outrage in the United States anytime we crossed 1,000-person mark amongst our own soldiers in any battle we're in, especially now. I mean, at this point, and again, every loss matters, so we should feel them. But the idea that you would be in a war and on our side, we're like, if we're losing 1,000 people in a year or a couple of years, we're doing something wrong. We are too capable, and our people are too important to lose this many. These motherfuckers, yes, have lost an entire Woodstock of people. Like if you nuked Woodstock, that's how many you'd kill here. 400K by fucking Friday. 400,000 dead Russians. And so the idea, by the way, that these motherfuckers would say to me as an American that I only smile because I pretend to care about human life, or I'm only doing it so I feel good about myself. Twofold. One, bullshit. And two, if that's the case, then my selfishness is better than yours. How do you like that? Yeah, Ayn Rand, son of a bitch. If I'm only doing it for my selfish reasons, then my selfish reasons are better at saving human life than your fake, moronic, morose altruism that you pretend to have.
Fatalism
that I've never seen any fucking signs of. Get the fuck out of here. And that, by the way, I don't even know if this number includes the guys on that submarine who died or the guys who were in the other ship the other day that sank.
Well, the ship that got hit today.
Oh, that one I haven't heard about.
The landing ship. The landing ship that got hit today. The Caesar, what is it? I have it written down here. The Caesar Kunikov, which is a landing ship. $350 million, some, 40 some odd hands on deck, most, probably lost.
Right.
And also, by the way, as long as we've mentioned it, I will just quickly notice that you will be seeing that the Ukrainians are continuously hitting landing ships.
Yes,
because they know they're going to they already have really destroy any possibility of an amphibious attack on Odessa, which is really what I think the Ukrainians are protecting against. But anyhow, I mean they keep, this is a country with no navy, and they keep hitting these ships. I mean the Black Sea Fleet is. I saw this morning or today, because look, by the way, we have to mention this. I'm not to get completely off topic here.
No, it's okay.
But I gotta mention this. Be wary of all the misinformation that is out there right now. The Russians are in overdrive. Clearly. Absolutely.
That's what I'm talking about today. That's what I started the show about. That's where I was heading.
It's insane.
It's totally on topic.
I've never seen anything like it, frankly. And and that includes the beginning of the full-scale invasion and all the rest of it. And I've been studying the Russians for 25 years. This is amongst, if not the most intense I have ever seen their information warfare techniques being employed. I mean, it's just crazy what is out there right now, and it's clearly because they're terrified that if this bill does go to the floor, I believe it will pass.
Absolutely.
If we can get Johnson to bring it to the floor, there are going to be enough Republicans that, well, I'm actually a little bit afraid that there might be some Democrats who will go across the aisle because of the Israel part of the aid package. But I think that can be managed. I think that Jeffries,
Present or they'll
Hakeem
abstain.
Jeffries,
It's
and
not going to affect.
or they'll
It's not
abstain, or they'll you get the whip. That's what the whip is for. You bring in the
right.
Democratic whip, you get people in line. I hope that's what'll happen with the Democrats, but I am sure that there will be Republicans that jump ship, and I'm trying to convince my Ukrainian friends and
Yeah.
lawmakers and politicians here. I'm like, just hold the faith. You just hold in there a little bit longer, because I know if this thing because I think inevitably the bill,
Will
can't,
pass.
he cannot keep that bill
No.
from getting to the floor. Johnson alone is not going to be able to stop
No.
that. So
So
hopefully, and they
that's-
are freaking out. The Russians are freaking out, and their information war. Be very wary of what you're seeing online nowadays. But the reason that I brought that up is because I noticed also there's a bunch of tankies and kind of Putinists and MAGA types online who are going, it's a lot. It's why would we waste all of our money sending arms and support to Ukraine? Because it's inevitable that Russia. I mean, look at the might of the Russian military. It's impossible that Ukraine could defend itself against this. And then they show video of war games, and somebody was very, very good and very, very smart, and identified in these war games, the ships that were offshore. They were simulating an amphibious landing, and somebody very, very smart got a still frame and went through all the ships and went, if you're going to be making the point that Russia is an invincible power that can't be defeated, maybe don't exemplify this by videos where you show an armada of ships where 4 of the 5 have been sunk by a country with no navy.
Right.
They were showing video of like, look how powerful the Russian military is. There's no way the Ukrainians can defend themselves. And they're showing footage of like a fleet that has all but been sunk, weapons that have all but been destroyed, soldiers that are most likely dead. It's just the narrative.
Well, that's what I was pointing out in here. And,
right. That's a great.
So this is the scratch card that they have on the Warriors for Ukraine Telegram site or whatever. But they constantly do this like a bingo card, and that's the ship I think that you're talking about, the landing ship that they just got, because this is the update, right? But and the idea that, by the way, a bunch of these other ships are in the fucking Arctic or are halfway across the world or are now having
are bottlenecked in on the far eastern shore of the Black Sea.
Right. And or are guarding their own Russian transport ships, because once they leave the Red Sea, the US is no longer protecting them. And so they've got to pick that up and go around the fucking, whichever direction they're going, because Somali pirates don't give a rat fuck about whose boat it is. And if the Russians are avoiding us or trying to evade sanctions, that means they're cutting through sketchy neighborhoods as far as where their boats are going, and they're getting taken. By the way, they've lost 3 ships in the last year, but that have been either sunk or stolen. So, anyways,
but this also plays into what we were just talking about.
Right.
This narrative that is sold to an audience and is just kind of like swallowed whole, and nobody contends. The mythology of Russia as this massive invincible power is simply not true. We can win this war. There is not a doubt in my mind, not in the slightest, that if these people are armed with the weaponry that we will be sending over, they can beat the Russians. There's not a doubt in my mind. But this narrative, this idea that Russia as this great major power has absolute, an invincible fighting force. Well, no, that's not true.
Well,
this is not a forever war.
If you know the bill is going to go through, and Ukrainian aid is going to go through, and you're like, my only hope is there aren't enough, say, Republicans. There are just a few. We've only got these few. Who else can we get to vote against this thing so that it scuttles it somehow or whatever? We're not going to get all the Republicans, so can we get some of the Democrats? Well, how do you get some of the Democrats? The exact method you were talking about, which is the Israel part of the bill, that it's attached to each
Mhm.
other so that you can't, break parts of it away, because there's more of an assurity that certain Republicans will vote for the Israel aid than the Ukrainians, and there are more people on the Democratic side that will vote for the Ukrainian aid than maybe some of the Israel stuff. So what do you do if you're the Russians and you're good at misinformation and disinformation and the establishment of these ideas? Is you hashtag the motherfucking hell out of this stuff, and you put out phrases that everybody in my chat, I'm sure, has heard a dozen times. Open air prison, most densely populated place on earth, 1.2 million displaced in Rafah, indiscriminate bombing, genocide. The Jews are the Nazis this time. I've heard that dozens of times. And that is a phrase that is being put out by every Russian account available. And the death toll is always half children. No matter where it is, no matter what happens, there are never any Hamas fighters killed, and it's always half children. Always. Like, think about how impossible that is as a potential.
Yeah. I saw Malcolm put out a thing today. Our pal Malcolm Nance put out a thing today where that there was this massive outcry about an incident where 3 young men were hit with a missile, and Malcolm was like, I guess you didn't notice that the one guy had a bunch of RPG rounds on his back.
Yeah.
They're
Hamas fighters. They are never.
Yeah, they're Hamas fighters.
Like, that's the weird thing. So I got to say, I love me some Democracy Now! And some Amy Goodman, and I've loved her for years, and I appreciate what she did in East Timor and the like and stuff. I don't know what the fuck is going on with Juan Gonzalez these days, and I sure as shit don't know about their other guest hosts. But let me tell you something. They are they are just barking Hamas numbers without any reference whatsoever. Yeah. They're not even doing the according to the Gaza Health Ministry part. They're just all in on it. And it's fucking sad, because if anybody knows how a tyrannical authoritarian structure works in the dissemination of information and control of it, it should be the people who work at fucking Democracy Now! And like I said, with Amy Goodman being in East Timor and how they were treated while they were there, and the fact that, by the way, if anybody knows the story, she and her a fellow reporter, where he was being beaten by the Indonesian militia, who were involved in this. Does anybody know how they survived? I mean, she threw herself on top of him while the beating was happening, hoping that they wouldn't beat a woman as much as they beat a man. That's not the case in that part of the world. You know how they both got out of it? You know how they survived? She held up her U.S. passport, and they stopped. They were afraid of what the U.S. would do because we care about innocent life, or if they found out about it. And even the leader now, the guy who's running for the head of the president to be the president of Indonesia, who was in charge of a lot of those massacres, says the only mistake was letting people know, letting people see it. You know why? Because countries like the United States will go, you're on a sanctions list. We're not giving you fucking money anymore. We'll send in food aid, but we're not going to give you weapon support or protect yourself against it. Fuck you. That's meaningful. They never even talk about that part of it. So anyways, I wanted to bring up these points, these phrases that you hear, because these are the things they use to weaponize your empathy against you.
Well, and I'll take it even when
don't matter. They do, but they're not being used so that they'll matter to you. They're basically trying to unbalance the scale about the circumstance there and weaponize your empathy so that they can rape and murder Jews. That's what that's about. And the Russians in this particular instance are pumping all of these fucking things up all day long on social media every fucking day, because it's a distraction, and it also goes, well, what's the difference between Israel and the United States? Isn't Israel and the United States, aren't they one? Aren't they attached to the hip? Doesn't Israel dance to America's drum, or America dance to Israel's drum? Neither one matters. Just that association is enough. And if you can make them look like the Nazis this time, and you can call the Ukraine, which has a Jewish president, the Nazi this time, you can see the strategy that's going on. Yeah.
Oh, I'll take it one step further. All right. I don't know if I've mentioned it to you previously, but the largest Russian embassy in the world is in Mexico City.
Yes.
Okay. And there's a reason for that. Okay. If you in 2016, the head of NATO, in the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, General Philip Breedlove, he put out there was a NATO did an investigation and released a report saying that they saw very clearly that Russia was weaponizing the Syrian refugee crisis to put pressure on Western Europe and in particular Britain in the run up to the Brexit vote, right? To be afraid of these waves of refugees that are coming.
Right.
He had weaponized immigration. If you do not think that right now there are not Russian operatives in Mexico right now exacerbating or planning to exacerbate and make things even worse on the border because of what's happening in the house, you're being very naive.
Yeah.
The Russians are on the Mexican border. There is no doubt in my mind, but they are there. I'm sure throwing money around. I'm sure they're
paying people's way. They're paying the cartels to let people through. They are, and by the way, the Chinese. The irony is that the Chinese people that are crossing, genuinely, I would say to the person, maybe there's a CCP operative in there somewhere, but they don't trust their own people enough to let them go live in the United States. The Russians would put these like kind of, like the show The Americans talks about or whatever, these kind of like people who would live as Russians amongst the Americans and still, whenever they were activated, rise up and kill everybody and kind of be a terrorist cell if they needed to for the uprising because they had the ideology of communism to make them do this, whatever. The Chinese don't trust that. The Chinese are afraid that if they're more afraid of how do you keep them down on the farm once you've seen gay Paris? And if they send an operative to the United States, if they don't have them on a short leash, physically controlling them at any given time, they're going to like it here and stay. So they don't send people the same way the Russians did. They just don't. And a lot of the people who are crossing who are Chinese are just like, our country's fucking dying. We want to go someplace where we can make a living. There's a reason why San Francisco has its own Chinese name, Jiujinshan, the old gold mountain. There's a long history of gold rushers from China. It's the only city in America that has its own Chinese name. The other detail thing, and I wanted to point this out. So far, according to every source I can find, the Israelis have dropped somewhere in the order of 40,000 bombs on structures inside Gaza. And I say structures because the death toll currently, according to everyone, is 28,000. Now, everybody said 28,000, and half of them are children, which is, let me tell you, a fucking absurdity. That is nowhere near close to true. It's a Hamas number. They are lying to you because you care about children. These motherfuckers, there was a video I saw yesterday of this little kid with a Palestinian flag that is like 5 years old. And there are people filming him on camera, telling him, throw rocks at the soldiers. There's these bunch of soldiers standing at a checkpoint. And this little kid with a Palestinian flag, they're basically saying, they're trying to make it so that the soldiers harm him, essentially. He's like, throw a rock at them, see what and the kid is so young, he doesn't even understand who he's supposed to throw a rock at. He doesn't even want to throw a fucking rock. This little 5-year-old kid, he picks up a rock and he just kind of throws it down at the ground. But they're yelling off screen at him, basically coaching him as a parent, like, go kick the soldier in the shins. Like, hit one of them, thinking that the soldiers are going to fucking murder this kid and they'll get it on video. It's fucking insane. The fact that
as you say, it's weaponizing empathy. Now, okay, all right, okay, extrapolating from that, we also see that here because they know that the West hates Nazis, that the idea of fascism is abhorrent. In the vast majority of Westerners abhor the idea of fascism. So what do? They accuse Ukrainians of being Nazis. They use Ukrainian nationalism, which is more akin to Irish nationalism than the Nazis. These are Ukrainians who want a nation state called Ukraine. They self-identify as Ukrainian nationalists in the sense that I want a nation of my own called Ukraine.
Yeah.
But the Russians, knowing and having studied us so intrinsically that they know that even the word in English of nationalist is a scary word for a lot of people, and they use it against the Ukrainians and against us as well, because they know that. But really, at the end of the day, Russia, as it's constituted now, they don't give a shit about Nazism. They don't give a shit about. They use it as a boogeyman. Stepan Bandera, right? This pretty admittedly awful human being who sucks up all the air in the room when you talk about this kind of stuff. They don't give a shit about him. They don't care about what he actually believed in, or why people are actually following him. It doesn't matter. It's something that they can scare people with, because people don't like Nazis. Nazis, Illinois Nazis. I hate those guys.
Yeah.
It's cynical.
Yeah.
It is not sincere. It is only as a device, because they have their own Nazis, frankly, in Russia. In fact, Russia is a fascist state in many ways. I mean,
right.
And you know what? I'm being too kind. I'm going to take away that caveat. Russia is a fascist state. It is built on fascism. It cloaks itself in something different, but it's fascism.
Yeah.
They don't give a shit about Ukrainian Nazis. They only. I mean, I've used this example before. I'll use it again. So Stepan Bandera, this guy who fought both Russians and Nazis because he was all about Ukraine, but ultimately, did put on an SS uniform. And look, I don't want to go into the whole history of Stepan Bandera. He was a pretty awful human being, and lots of people here agree with me.
Right.
But he was on stage in Ukraine when at the very same time that there were these two brothers who were Orthodox Church. They were Orthodox priests, and they saved tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Jews. They helped them escape, get out of Ukraine. But the Russians will never mention the Sheptytsky brothers. They'll talk your ear off about Stepan Bandera. But the Sheptytsky brothers, who were on the world stage, or on the Ukrainian stage at the same time, and who are still revered today, there are statues, there are street names, all the rest of it. But why is it that the Russians will pull out of their pocket their toolkit, Bandera, at the drop of a hat? It's not about Bandera. It's about using the fear and the hatred of Nazi ideology as a weapon against Ukrainians. Who, there are no Nazis in parliament. There are far right guys here, and there are some straight up Nazis here. Yeah, absolutely. Pretty much every country has them, but they also have. That's the 10%
a
synagogue, a functioning. Right. That's exactly.
That's no excuse.
But there's a synagogue right near
the idea. The idea that Tucker Carlson would be okay with Russia invading the United States because of Charlottesville, especially when his head writer at Fox was fired after he was discovered to be writing racist propaganda under a pseudonym on
Storm Shadow.
Yeah.
Stormfront. Right. On Stormfront.
Yeah.
Straight up Nazi.
And the idea that
the adulation.
Let me put on my
sorry. Go ahead.
My Tucker Carlson hat at this moment to go. You don't hire a Nazi without believing in Nazis or whatever. If your head writer's a Nazi, everyone knows that. Everybody knows that you would only hire a head writer as a Nazi if you're an actual Nazi yourself. Of course, everyone knows this, and everyone's saying it. And that's how he handled his interview with Vladimir Putin. Can I show you something real quick to the folks at home, to the who's at home? In line of what I was saying about the weaponization of the war in Gaza, specifically slanting it against Israel and literally elevating every talking point Hamas puts out while downplaying every IDF, fact. Every time they find something factual, just going, that's just propaganda. Meanwhile, what Hamas says will be reported without any reference whatsoever. If I may, this is a Hamas fighter wearing his bandana. This is video they put up themselves. Okay, the Hamas guys filmed this themselves. This is not something Israel put out. This is from October 7th. Those kids are still missing. This baby might actually be dead, but the older kid is still missing. Because they very well may have cooked one of these children. This may be one of the kids that they cooked. This kid was carried away on October 7th. He's still gone. And so the idea that somehow this abstract number that Hamas puts out all the time about it's always half children. It's always half children. No matter what they hit, there's always half children. Well, unless these motherfuckers are walking around with kids strapped to them like this, that makes no fucking sense. That is the attempt to weaponize my empathy about children while these motherfuckers are stealing and cooking kids. Get the fuck out of here with that nonsense. But what they're doing with these talking points, what does it bring you with these particular talking points, these hashtag ideas, these bumper stickers instead of brain work that they use? What's the result of that? It means that members of the squad or certain Democrats will either hesitate about voting for Israel aid, which ultimately will stop Ukraine aid.
Yeah, I'm worried about that. I really am. I'm being.
It's going to pass, but that's what they're trying to do.
I think it will
what's
pass.
going on.
I think it will pass. Look, and not to point out a name, but is Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. They're going to be in a hard spot.
Yep.
I mean, and I admit I have empathy for their situation, but obviously I'm biased. But
right.
We got to help these people. We have to. I mean, that money has got to pass. It really, it is. We are in such a crunch point in this war. If we do not pass this bill, if we betray our promises, we're going to see a lot more dead people. I've seen a lot of argument that we are sending weapons here, we are making the war worse. Nothing could be further from the truth. Right. The best way to end this war is to give them everything that they need so that they can have a victory, so that they can get, can force Putin to withdraw his troops.
Here's the thing. There are people in the chat room who are reflecting on what I just said and saying the Israelis are dropping munitions on, quote, residential buildings and refugee camps, which are primarily housing families. There is no situation, Brad, where that makes any fucking sense. Because in an area that has 1 million people in it, that's the size of, in this case, the Rafah refugee camp, which is the size of a large concert facility that has somewhere in the order of 1 million people in it. If you're dropping bombs, munitions on those areas, there is no way there are fewer deaths than there are bombs dropped. It's not possible. And again, this is if you believe Hamas's numbers in totality. If you believe every single number they're saying is true, which, by the way, you could take away the 500 they said were killed outside the hospital when one of their rockets flew backwards and landed in the parking lot. Those numbers don't add up. There is no situation where a country drops, again, allegedly is indiscriminately bombing and carrying out genocide on a people where they drop 40,000 bombs and have less than one person dead per bomb. There's no way. Explain that to me. Explain to me how you drop 40,000 munitions on an area that's the most densely populated place in the world, and you have fewer dead than actual bombs. And then explain to me how half of them are still children and always children. Never mind the fact that, and by the way, the dead aren't always killed in bombings. There are gunfights. There are fights between IDF soldiers and Hamas fighters. And yet somehow when a Hamas fighter checks out, he's instantly given civilian status again. What the fuck is that? How is that even part of the conversation? And how does that not, by the way, undermine the peace process of trying to work with the Palestinians in the future? Because again, AB logic being what it is, if all Palestinians are Hamas, then all Hamas are Palestinians, or all civilians are actually Hamas fighters and all Hamas fighters are actually civilians, then at what point do you make a peace deal with a group of people that are indistinguishable from the fighters among them?
Well, we also have to look. I covered that conflict. I have been to Israel. I've been to the West Bank. I have not. I never actually physically went into Gaza, but I have overlooked Gaza. You know, we also need the Palestinian Authority to step up. Abbas has to be replaced. I mean, look, the problem with that conflict is there's so many people who benefit from the conflict that it's entrenched. Similar to what was going on with the Irish Troubles, although that was degrees less. And I truly do sympathize with the pain and the suffering in Gaza and in Israel, and I want to see it resolved. But there are so many complicated, and people have fought over that little stretch of land.
Right.
For
fucking
eons,
magic rocks.
okay?
It's the magic rock conundrum.
It's my sky daddy is better than your sky daddy.
Right.
Yeah, all of that. I get all of that, and I want to see it resolved. I want to see whatever resolution. I still believe, look, a two-party, a two-state solution, whatever. But people have fought over that little stretch of land forever, and people have fought over this land for a very, very long time. But there is a clear path here. There is a very clear path here.
There's not a distinguished
to resolve this issue in this part of the world. What's happening in Gaza and Israel, and again, I have my deepest sympathies and I have deep concerns for what's going on there, but I am standing on ground that is seeped in blood and has been seeped in blood for centuries, and we can resolve it. This is the last stretch of land. Empires have fought, and I've talked to you about this before, but maybe not in a long time. So let me just mention this one more time. The stretch of land between the Baltic Sea in the north, the Adriatic in the southwest, and the Black in the southeast, that little triangle has had empires pushing and moving through it, and it has caused this stretch of land caused both the First and the Second World War. Okay. Hopefully this will not go to a third world war here, but this will resolve with a Ukrainian victory, or hopefully not, but the potential of a Russian victory. But look, if there's a Russian victory, then it's not going to be resolved because the Ukrainians will always be fighting for their own self-determination. But what I'm trying to say is, unlike the conflict down in Gaza and Israel, which is awful, and we need to obviously be paying very close attention to it, that is going to be if there is a place on earth that fits the definition of a forever war, it's that conflict. People always fought over that stretch of land. Here in Ukraine, if this gets resolved, it resolves issues that have lingered and festered for centuries and could be concluded,
remedied,
if we just support the Ukrainians.
Yeah. Well, I agree, and a lot of that is because it's based on for whatever Putin's blather about fucking motherland and bullshit. It's really about territory, and that's resource related territory, access to the sea, which you could buy. You don't need to fight for it anymore.
Strategic interests,
and even the strategic industry, against fucking who. There's a lot of that that's just falling apart. Like the myth of fighting in that area of the world versus the reality of it. Whereas, in a situation where you have, that the Arab states around Israel doing everything they can to eliminate their countries of Jews over the last 30 years, especially, but certainly the last 50. And then these, two remnant areas in Israel where they, try again to either create a path to peace or two-state solution, those kind of things, which again, the United States supports. I support. I think most people support a variation of that if it's at all possible, is made more difficult by the actions of Hamas. And again, the weaponization of everybody's empathy about these kind of things, where Hamas gets to attack on October 7th and then call the Israelis monsters for their response to it. Never mind the fact that 20% of Israel is Arabs, which is not something you can say in terms of there's no Arab country around where 20% of the population is Jewish, much less 70-30 on any particular group. Also, Gino in chat says, someone who marched against the Iraq war but swallows every utterance of the IDF as gospel. What the fuck, Hal? Okay, first of all, nothing I said was IDF gospel. None of what I said comes from the IDF. My questioning comes from the talking points I'm hearing everywhere. Seriously, I don't know where. If the IDF said what I said, I'm curious to see where. But the idea that you can drop 40,000 bombs and only hit 29,000 people if your goal is genocide makes no sense to me. If your goal is the elimination of an entire people, or if you're quote unquote indiscriminately bombing. Now, the point of talking about those phrases is, do I think it's going to settle anything that happens in Israel and Gaza? No. What I'm saying is that those phrases are all over the Russian troll farms. Those phrases aren't. Let me explain to you. The vast majority of the sites that you see that use those phrases don't give a rat fuck about Jews in Israel or Arabs in Israel or Palestinians who want peace or Palestinians who join Hamas or UNRWA. They don't give a rat fuck about any of those folks. As a matter of fact, the longer this goes on, the better it is for them. Mm-hmm. What they're doing is using those categorical phrases as a way of dumbing down our conversation and creating an adversarial fight between people in Western countries, specifically the United States and most of Europe, to try and put us at odds over shit so that we start believing there's never going to be a solution and there's no fucking point. And by the way, what's the difference between this and Ukraine and isn't, if Israel's the bad guy in this situation, then probably the country with the Jewish president is the bad guy in Ukraine. And so maybe Russia's got a point. And can I just go back to drinking my fucking latte? Yeah, the 29,000 number comes from Amnesty International. Yes, I am not getting that number from IDF. That is the number. And by the way, they are quoting the Hamas, the Gaza health ministry. So again,
I mean, as somebody who has been shot at by the IDF as a clear, wearing a clearly designated press, personal protection vest. I got no love in my heart for the IDF. Right. It's a very troubled organization. Look, it's aside from all the politics that we're talking about, aside from they're combatants in a war and things but right. the idea there, Israel definitely has some work to do on itself.
Of course,
there's some
I mean,
absolute
I think we can all agree. Netanyahu has to go. Period.
Yeah,
that I think. Yeah. Let's settle in on that.
They do need to reform the IDF. They simply do. Because
the irony, though,
they're taught some pretty drastic.
The irony, though, that Netanyahu, everybody's like, he created Hamas by giving them money or whatever. Well, one of the reasons he was doing that is because he tried to buy the peace, like they managed to do with the PA and the PLO. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but Hamas having in their very charter, that
death to
all Jews must be
eliminated. Yeah, all Jews have to be eliminated. Yeah, this is not the same organization.
It's like Russia with Ukraine. It's like Russia with Ukraine. How do you fight against? How can you capitulate? I mean, all these demands that if we give them more weapons, they'll just keep fighting. Well, of course they're going to keep fighting because Russia's stated goal is the destruction of the very identity of being Ukrainian.
That brings us to, which side are you on? So in any situation, if there are two sides and one of the side, if they put down their guns, they will get killed. And if the other side puts down their guns, the war will be over. I'm for the side that will get killed if they put their guns down. Because the only way this war is going to end, in the other instance, if the Ukrainians drop their guns and stop fighting, it's the end of Ukraine. Because the Russians have already stated that's the goal. That we got to destroy the Ukrainian identity. It's Russian land anyways. You fuckers don't. If you really believe you're Ukrainian, you're brainwashed, and you have to either be killed or retaught. You've got to be re-educated about who you are.
Openly calling for concentration camps these days. By the way, I don't know if you saw that.
And Hamas is doing the same thing. If Hamas, if Hamas dropped their guns, there would be arguably a Palestinian state at this point. There would have been. They were already headed in that direction. And by the way, that's because Hamas doesn't want a Palestinian state. Hamas wants the elimination of Israel. If Israel drops their guns, Israel goes away.
before him, Sharon, and
right.
Again, I hate to be dragging on about this, and I know we're running long, but
yeah,
as awful as that conflict is down in Gaza and Israel, it's, obviously there's going to be a lot of work that's going to have to be done, and it's an absolute morass. Mm-hmm. But $60 billion would go a long way towards getting a lasting peace here. We have to pass that.
I agree.
We have got to pass. Call your elected official. I'm not joking around. This is probably the most important inflection point that we stand upon as citizens of a republic that can have their voices heard. Yeah. Now, if you care about peace in Ukraine, and you genuinely care about Ukrainian peace and Ukrainian lives, give them the means to defend themselves. Let's finish this war, and this aid package will do it. Mm-hmm. The fact that one man, who, by the way, has very sketchy ties to a lot of Russian, oligarchs, and I'm talking about Johnson here. It's unacceptable that he is not putting that on the floor. So we need to put as much pressure on, whoever is your elected official, get that bill on the floor. And I contend that it'll pass. I would hope that our better natures will prevail and that thing will pass, because we we are in this state of chaos in no small part because of the Kremlin and we. Again, this is something I've said before, but I'll say it again. When the Cold War ended, we thought our system would be the one that would go east, and that there would be the rule of law and capitalism and democracy in Russia.
Well, and
Sadly,
it started to,
what
and they
happened
fought
for a
it.
variety, well, and
You're
then
right.
and then
I
they
would
pushed
argue.
back, and we that's a long conversation,
Right.
But what happened instead of our system going east is their cruelty and kleptocracy and corruption and poison
Yeah.
fled west. And a lot of the ills of the world today, and people get up in my face about this because they think I see Russians behind every tree,
Right.
because I kind of focus on this part of the world. I'm not just focusing, I'm not like being myopic and only seeing Russia behind everything, but Russia is definitely a spoiler on the world stage, and pushing back against their what they are trying to spread around the world, because they don't want to be part of the world. They want the world to be like them, and I don't want to. The alternative that they offer, which is might makes right, power is always binary, everything is that there is no inalienable rights, that whatever rights you get are things that you take by force. That's not the kind of world I live in. I want to live in, or pass on to generations going forward. This is really,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here in Kiev with bated breath, because I know it's not a guarantee that bill will pass. I hope that it will pass, but unless we really make our voices heard, there is a chance that the
Sure.
KGB, or the GRU now will fuck things up. So now's the time to call your elected officials.
Agreed.
We can win
Agreed.
here. We can 100% win here. Gaza and Israel are a shit show, and the Holy Land, has always been soaked in blood. Not any reason to ignore it or to put it on a back burner or something. We can walk and chew gum, but that's a stretch of the earth that's always has seen conflict, and sadly, I don't see that ending anytime soon.
Because it is a religious fight. It is unfalsifiable.
Yes, that's the problem.
You run into this issue. There will never be an actual answer to it. This territorial disputes, rule of law, those kind of things. It's why we live in secular countries. It's why the West runs things the way it is, because we got tired of those kind of fights. And what you have with Vladimir Putin, for example, is trying to raise these to existential fights for the country itself, which is the modern equivalent of borderline spiritualist religion base, right? That's the idea. Is that like Mother Russia is our god in this argument, and this was her land always, and we just have to get it back. It's using the same kind of nerve in the human psyche that that you would use down there. It just doesn't quite land, right? It just doesn't quite have the same grip, which is good. That's the important thing. It's not going to. So we're over, and I really appreciate you being here today, because it's an important conversation. Again,
it's crazy time.
I don't want to tell anybody. I don't want to tell anybody how to think about these things, but I want you to recognize how many bumper stickers you sign on to without really working through them. How many catchphrases you hear yourself repeating without that you couldn't, or it's uncomfortable when you try to justify them verbally without just saying the phrase. That if you start breaking them down, they don't quite match what you're feeling associated with that, because they are meant to trigger a mind virus. They are specifically designed as phrases to manipulate people. And that's where this comes from. And like I said, the Russians have been at it forever. I personally think the 91 fallback was rope-a-dope. I've talked to Phil about this in the past. That is my own personal feeling about this, that this was always like, we'll use their own empathy against them. They'll feel sorry for us because our country collapsed. We'll grab some of their shit, and then we'll turn it on them. And this happened in China as well. So I want to, on our way out the door, let me show you something real quick that I was relating to earlier. This is a story in China right now. In the Shandong province, there was a shooting, 21 people, 40 injured. including 2 police officers. In the United States, when we have a shooting equivalent to that, it's news forever. I mean, like Vegas Strong is still a hashtag here because of the shooting we had from Mandalay Bay on the music festival here.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even read about this in China at all. If someone posts it, they get a visit from the police. There have been stories coming out about it. Largely, you'll only find this, by the way, you won't even find it on our media. You'll find it on Reddit and other places, and like expats who got footage of it, and they're able to, somebody sent it from nearby and then just erased it from their phone or used a VPN to send stuff because they're using that like kind of smoke signal system that you were talking about to get things out through a VPN. But this happened yesterday. 21 people were killed in a mass shooting in a city in China. 40 others injured in this shooting. 2 of them police officers, and nothing. Not over here, not anywhere else. But you bet your ass that every single mass shooting in the United States has crossed the lips of Solovyev and Simonyan and oftentimes Putin himself when discussing how much we suck as a country. If you really want to deep dive, go look at Russian serial killers, because they have a history that outweighs all of our fucking dudes.
And pretty horrific too.
Horrifying.
Really horrific.
And many of them
like they didn't
just brutal and went on forever. There's still some that
cannibalism
they haven't bothered to solve it. They're not going to. And so the important thing is that it's not, again, I'm not telling you what to believe, but I'm telling you how other people are trying to get you to believe stuff.
Yeah. That is the other message before on the way out the door here, is that one, please, I beg of you, I beseech you on the behalf of the people of the lovely human beings that surround me right now, call your elected officials. Now, if any time in this entire conflict, now's the time to do it. Please do that. And secondly, be aware that there is a huge information war going on right now, and there's a massive offensive being conducted by the Russians and the GRU and the internet, Internet Research Agency. They are going to flood the zone with a lot of confusing information.
Yeah.
Just be very wary, and especially on that platform run by Musk. That
right.
That's
what I was trying to tell
facilitating
Tara
all
the other
this.
day. Like he is absolutely pushing that stuff to the front.
100%. He's pushing the pro-Kremlin perspective. I mean, I even admitted, putting out stuff like there's no way Putin can lose. If Putin loses, that he's going to be assassinated, that he's worried about. Like, I care about what Putin is worried about.
Right.
But equally also, by the way, do try and someday, sometimes post the truth about Elon Musk and see what the algorithm does to your little post.
Yep.
So, he's not about freedom of speech.
Also, you can follow both of us on Threads.
He's got an agenda.
And I'm here every day, sometimes twice a day. So share the show, like and subscribe. We don't have to agree about everything, but what we can agree with is guard the gates of your mind against it being your best traits being used against you. That's my message for today. Not about which details you should believe, not which elements of the modern political and social sphere that you must pay attention to. I'm not going to tell you. But what I am going to tell you is that there are people out there who know that you care about shit, and what they want to do is they want to throw a fucking bit in the mouth of your caring and lead you around to places and use that caring, use that good nature until they burn you the fuck out, until you get, quote, exhausted, or you can't deal with it anymore, or you don't know which way is up, or you don't know who to trust. There are active measures against you. That was the key framing of Operation Denver and what the Russians were trying to do. It's an active measure. It's not passive. They're not just going, let's see what the fuck happens.
Your brain.
They're trying to get into your brain.
They're trying to get into your mind and alter your perception of reality and manipulate your emotions. And it's really very, very dangerous.
Even if you
and
even if you take
that-
away
that
that Phil and I are
platform must-
trying to do that
Jesus.
on the behalf of the things that we believe. If you want to believe that, good. At least it's making you more wary about just automatically assuming certain things. I don't want
Well,
that.
I make no
He
bones
doesn't want
about
that.
it. I'm pro-Ukrainian, so
Right, but that's
you
because
know,
you're there.
I'm very open.
That's not what I'm talking
that.
about. I'm not talking about our own proclivity, but I'm not trying to lie to you. But if you think I'm trying to lie to you
I'm
or
not,
whatever,
I'm not.
feel free to think that, because at the very least, you can go look up what I said or what I'm talking about and check it against something else. I welcome that. Other folks don't. Other folks want to shame you into not looking. And if anybody tries to shame you into not looking, that they're afraid of what you'll find out. I am never going to be afraid of what you'll find out. I just want you to look, use your critical thinking skills, actually care about this stuff, and know that a solution doesn't come through. You can't solve a problem if the elements of the equation are lies. And you can't solve for a problem if you won't admit to what X is in that regard, as far as the number or the outlier, like with COVID and those kind of things. So there you go. On that note, thank you so much, Phil, for being on with us and going a little bit long. Appreciate it. And
That's okay.
I'll see you on Saturday. Yes?
I hope so. I can't
Okay.
say I might have a conflict.
Understood.
I'll let you know.
All right. I appreciate that, brother. Be safe. Okay. Thanks so much.
All
Everybody
right.
follow
See you
Phil
guys.
Bittner on
Call
on
your elected officials.
That's right.
Get that aid package passed, please.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All
All
right,
right.
guys.
There he goes.
Take care.
Thanks, Phil.
See you, though.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Later.
Bye. Be well. Thanks. And thanks for having this conversation with me, you guys, because I know it's quote to borrow a phrase, it's triggering for some folks when I talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict right now, or I talk about Russia and Ukraine or any of these things. And granted, let me be abundantly clear. I also don't believe some of the people that are in the chat just automatically, and especially people who show up new and throw shit about and then run off or whatever, that they're not trolling or they're not, fishing for, they're not trying to weaponize empathy during that as well. I'm just not going to fall for it. Oh, well, thank you. I will check my Venmo, by the way, and remind everybody that you can support the show via Venmo, patreon.com/HalSparks, etc. Oh my gosh, Leslie, thank you so much for all you do this burgers. Let Ficus know I'm still holding out hope that he falls for me like I fell for him. Well, there's an entire possibility that that he might. I think he actually may reciprocate stuff. You bet your ass I do. I love that girl so much. It's just that JoJo from Jersey, she keeps me up at night, man. She just, sometimes I wake up in a flop sweat, and I'm like, JoJo! And last week, I banged my head on the top of the trailer. Actually, that's not true. Not completely true. I was sleeping in a trunk. It's a long story. None of your goddamn business. Anyways, I'll take it back over. I don't want to explain myself. All right. So, love you guys, and I will see you later. And again, I will always be on the side of the innocent victim in a circumstance, and that means also not allowing the shit I care about to be stolen, like my empathy to be stolen by somebody who will misuse it. My loyalty, my caring, all those kind of things. I'm not going to give those to somebody who doesn't earn it. And I will always warn you guys to watch out for that stuff. It's like I said, every article, what does the third paragraph say? I don't give a fuck about the headline. It's the third, the fifth, or the seventh. If the newspaper is in color, it's the fifth or the seventh. If it's not in color, it's the third. That's where the yeah buts are. Always pay attention to the yeah buts in any story. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. See you later on. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm going to go get my snuggle on. That's just what I do. Just get used to the idea. That's all you need to know. Thank you again, Leslie. Oh my God. So sweet. Absolutely the show this afternoon.